Official statistics have shown France's economy grew by 0.3% in the third quarter, but it is clear that the Eurozone's second-largest economy battles to exit a prolonged slump. For example, data released this morning shows that French services PMI comes in at a deficient 47.9. To get the full story, I am joined by Peter Jarret, Head of Division at OECD. Peter, growth recovered slightly in the third quarter, but what is the real story of France's economic recovery? And what do you expect from the unemployment figures released tomorrow?
I would say that the real story about what is happening is that there is still no sign of a pickup in activity. That third quarter number that you cited was a bit illusory because all the growth was in stock building, and that was surely unintended and will have to be worked off, lowering GDP growth for any given amount of final demand. The fourth quarter will also be depressed by the fall in energy demand and production in October and November due to the warm weather, though that's a medium-term positive, as households will have more money to spend on other items. A similar story applies to all the rain and flooding in the south in recent weeks. A short-term negative, but replacing damaged goods will lead to more spending next year. All in all, we expect essentially no growth this quarter, but look forward to better news in the coming months, though domestic and global surprises could well override purely economic forces. As to tomorrow's figures on the true state of the labor market from the quarterly household survey, we think that they should presumably show upward pressure on the unemployment rate according to the standardized ILO definition. But because movements in the labor force are hard to predict, and there is often slippage between these unemployment figures and the monthly data based on registrations with Pôle emploi, we aren't all that sure, and there have been several occasions of differences in outcomes in the past year or so.
What will be key for boosting jobs and growth in France?
Our take is that the key in the short run is to do everything possible to grow spending since demand is insufficient. That implies avoiding further budgetary stringency as sought by the European Commission, and the ECB doing everything possible to ease financial conditions. That's not to say that there is no problem with French public finances. The government spends far more than is affordable, and ways of cutting back have to be found over the coming years. Lower spending will allow lower taxes, especially for businesses and labor. That will go some way to dealing with France's fundamental problem of poor competitiveness, which shows up in its current account deficit and its persistent loss of export market shares. But lower tax pressure needs to be supplemented by a whole series of structural reforms to improve the supply side of the economy. Some of those have been proposed by the government, and others are in preparation, but much more needs to be done, though the political situation isn't all that propitious at the moment.
Thank you very much for joining me today. That wraps up today's interview, but keep an eye on Eurozone activity right here with Dukas Copy.